Jasmine Crockett believed she had Caroline Levit cornered until Levit calmly delivered a statement that silenced the entire hearing room. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and subscribe so you won't miss the latest updates. The hearing chamber was packed to capacity, with cameras positioned and microphones ready. The atmosphere was tense, like the quiet before a storm. Caroline Levit, White House press secretary, sat at the witness table, her demeanor cool and composed, almost frosty. Wearing a simple black blazer, her piercing eyes gazed forward. She came alone, just herself, a water glass, and quiet confidence. Across the room, the door swung open as Jasmine Crockett, Texas congresswoman, entered dramatically. Her bright red blouse stood out, her gaze sharp and cutting. She didn't even glance at Levit. The cameras were already focused on her, and she knew it. The House Oversight Committee chairman banged his gavel, the sound echoing. The hearing on White House media accountability begins, he announced firmly, but no one paid attention. All eyes were on the two women, Levit, Trump's spokesperson defending the administration, and Crockett, the Democratic firebrand ready to challenge any explanation. The chairman banged his gavel again, the sharp sound cutting through the murmurs. "We're here to examine the White House's responsibility in managing public information," he stated, his tone low but unable to overcome the rising tension. Cameras panned slowly across the audience before settling on Caroline Levit. The lighting highlighted her face, emphasizing her icy composure, as if she'd experienced such pressure numerous times before. Opposite her, Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, rapidly tapping her pen on a stack of papers, her gaze sharp enough to pierce Levit on the spot. The chairman turned to Levit. "Miss Levit, you have 5 minutes for your opening statement." The microphone hissed faintly as she pulled it closer, but her voice rang out clear and unwavering. "Thank you, Chairman and members of the House Oversight Committee," she began steadily and confidently. "I'm not here to apologize or make excuses. President Trump's administration believes in one simple principle: the American people have the right to speak, and it's not our job to silence them on X or anywhere else. We allow them to express themselves freely, whether you agree with it or not." Congresswoman Crockett. She cast a quick glance at Crockett, a flicker of challenge in her eyes, but not enough to crack her composure. The room fell completely silent as Levit continued, her voice neither loud nor flowing but sharp as a blade. "The White House doesn't control the narrative. We don't need to. The people decide what they believe and say. If someone thinks that's chaos, so be it, but we call it real democracy, not something filtered through politicians or media who think they can judge." She paused, took a sip of water, and gently set the glass down. "I know I'll be grilled today. I'm ready, but don't expect me to apologize for letting Americans be free." She finished, pushed the microphone away, and sat back with hands still clasped. Scattered applause broke out from a few corners, clearly Trump supporters, but it was quickly drowned by murmurs. The cameras swung to Crockett. She didn't clap or smile. Her lips were pressed tight, her fingers stopped tapping the pen and instead gripped it like she wanted to snap it. An aide whispered something beside her, but she waved them off, eyes locked on Levit. Clearly, she wasn't letting that opening slide easily. The chairman nodded, his voice dry. "Thank you, Miss Levit. We'll move to questioning. Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to start?" Crockett didn't wait for him to finish. She stood, pulling the microphone close, her voice booming like a gunshot. "Oh, I'd love to, Mr. Chairman." A few chuckles rose from some Democratic lawmakers, but the air quickly grew heavy again. She pointed at Levit without hesitation. "You just gave a nice speech about real democracy, but I want to ask, does real democracy mean letting lies spread rampant on X, tearing this country apart? Or is that just an excuse for the White House to dodge accountability?" Levit didn't flinch. She met Crockett's gaze steadily. "Congresswoman Crockett, I don't think you want the real answer," she replied, her voice light but cutting. "But I'll give it. We don't control X, and we don't control the people. You want to call it lies? That's your call. We call it truth, truth not everyone wants to hear." A faint smile flickered on her lips, barely there but enough to set Crockett off. Crockett leaned closer to the mic, her voice rising. "Truth? You call election conspiracies, divisive rhetoric truth? You stand there representing the White House and say letting people get brainwashed is democracy? I can't believe this." She turned to the audience, hand raised as if rallying support. "This isn't democracy, this is chaos your administration created." The room buzzed, murmurs grew louder, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Levit responded, her tone still even. "If you think the people aren't smart enough to tell truth from lies, the problem's not with us, Congresswoman Crockett. Maybe you should ask yourself who's really trying to dictate what people should think. We let them think freely. You want the White House to filter every word to fit your view. Is that freedom in your eyes? The words were like fuel on a fire. Crockett slammed her hand on the table, the bang echoing. "Don't play innocent with me," she shouted, eyes blazing. The chairman's gavel pounded repeatedly, but no one cared. Jasmine Crockett stood there, hands on hips, eyes burning like she wanted to incinerate Caroline Levit on the spot. Levit sat still, her face unmoved, as if Crockett's fury was just a passing breeze. The hearing room crackled, the air thick with the clash between the two women, one a raging fire, the other an unmelting block of ice. Crockett took a deep breath, her voice trembling with anger but still sharp. "Miss Levit, I want to clarify one thing before we go further. You were a lawyer in Texas fighting for people hurt by lies. I saw in Dallas where conspiracies tore communities apart. I'm here for them. And you're the youngest press secretary, loyal to Trump, just had a kid, yet you're standing here defending this so-called people's voice. I don't get it. Do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you just reading Trump's script?" Levit tilted her head slightly, a hint of curiosity in her eyes, but never breaking from Crockett. "Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not here to tell my life story," she replied steadily and coolly. "But if you must know, yes, I believe what I say. I'm not reading a script. I speak because this administration believes Americans don't need someone holding their hand through every word on X."
Crockett let out Askov. The sound reverberating trug the mic.
"Then let me ask you straight," Crockett continued. "Do you know what the White House leaves on X? Posts about election fraud, anti-immigrant rants. You call that the people's voices? That's lies, chaos, the stuff tearing this country apart. And you, Miss Levit, stand there with that bland smile acting like you're blameless." Levit didn't smile. She paused, adjusted the mic, then replied, "Congresswoman Crockett, you can call it whatever you want, but we don't write those posts, the people do. If you don't like the content, the issue isn't us, it's the very people you represent. What they think, what they say, that's not something the White House can or should control." Her voice was calm, but each word stabbed at Crockett's argument. Crockett slammed her hand down again, startling a few onlookers. "Don't dodge me," she yelled, pointing straight at Levit. "You know what those lies cause. People believe the election was stolen, people threaten violence, and you just sit there saying that's democracy? I'm not buying that excuse. You're Trump's puppet, letting him and his cronies weaponize X."
The room erupted.
Murmurs spread across the gallery, some Democratic lawmakers nodding, Republicans shaking their heads. Levit didn't budge, her gaze locked on Crockett. "Puppet," she repeated, a trace of mockery in her tone but still restrained. "Congresswoman Crockett, I don't run X, and neither does the White House. If you think the people are a weapon just because they say things you don't like, maybe you're the one who doesn't trust them. Who do you want to silence, Trump or your own voters?" Crockett leaned into the mic, her voice shrill, almost a shout.
Don't act noble with me. I'm not silencing anyone.
"I want you in the White House held accountable. Those posts aren't voices, they're hate, violence, the stuff turning people against each other. You think you're clever sitting there playing innocent, but I see through it. You're enabling chaos." Levit raised an eyebrow, the first hint of a reaction, but quickly regained her calm. "Hate or not, Congresswoman Crockett, I don't decide that and neither do you," she said, her voice rising slightly.
You want the White House to censor every post on X? Fine.
But don't be surprised when the people turn on you. They don't like being treated like kids who need babysitting." Crockett fired back instantly, hand raised as if to drown Levit in her fury.
I'm not babysitting anyone.
"I'm protecting them from the lies you let spread.
Do you know the consequences?
People believe conspiracies, act on them, and you just shrug saying that's freedom?"
Freedom to destroy the country. Her voice broke, emotionsspilling out uncontrollably. Levit stared straight at Crockett, unblinking.
"Freedom's always messy," she replied, her voice low but sharp.
But what do you want?
"A world where the government filters every word to protect people? That's not freedom, Congresswoman Crockett. That's control. Something you seem to enjoy." She paused, letting the words hang in the air.
The room filled with noise.
A few woos rose from the stands, reporters scribbling furiously. Crockett gripped the mic like she wanted to crush it. "Control," she repeated, her voice shaking with rage.
You dare sei I want control? I want truth. I want accountability.
And you're just Trump's mouthpiece letting him and his MAGA crowd sow chaos unchecked. The chairman banged his gavel again.
Order. Order.
But his voice drowned in Crockett's emotional storm.
Levit gazed out the window, the city lights twinkling below.
She stayed silent for a moment, her fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. I didn't do it for Trump, she said, her voice tinged with a hint of reflection. I did it for principle. People have to be able to speak, right or wrong. Otherwise, we're no different from the ones Crockett hates. Stefanik raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She stepped closer, patting Levit's shoulder lightly. You're the youngest press secretary in history, and today you proved why.
Take a break, Caroline. You weh ihr net IT.
Levit nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the view outside. She wondered, am I doing the right thing? Still, she brushed it off quickly. She believed in what she stood for, not Trump, not the White House, but the idea that truth would find its way, no matter how messy it got. A few rooms away, Jasmine Crockett stormed into her office, the door slamming shut behind her. She dropped her stack of papers on the desk, hands trembling, then collapsed into her chair. Her team, 3 young aides, stood around, none daring to speak. Finally, one broke the silence, voice hesitant. You okay, Congresswoman Crockett? You did great. The whole country heard you. Crockett looked up, eyes still red, breathing heavily.
Great, she repeated, her voice hoarse.
I didn't take her down. I yelled, I banged the table, but Levit.
She didn't budge.
I don't feel like I won. Another aide, a short-haired girl, stepped forward, placing a hand on the desk. You spoke the truth. That's what matters. Levit can be calm, but you showed we won't stay silent against lies. Crockett gave a faint, bitter laugh, shaking her head. Truth doesn't mean a thing if I can't make them accountable. She stood there cold as ice and made me look like the one who lost control.
I hate that.
She tapped her fist lightly on the desk, no strength left for a hard slam like before. She remembered her days as a lawyer in Texas, fighting for people hurt by misinformation, families broken by conspiracies, communities split by lies. That's why she got into politics, why she shouted today. She turned back to her team. I'm not stopping, she said, her voice firmer. Levit and Trump might have won today, but I'll make them pay somehow. Out there, the public remained divided. In Texas, Crockett's voters gathered outside her local office, holding signs. Jasmine speaks for us, an older woman told a reporter. She's fiery, but she cares, not like that cold crew at the White House. In New Hampshire, Levit's home state, locals crowded into a coffee shop, proudly re-watching the clip. A middle-aged man grinned. She's our girl, calm but cutting. Crockett didn't stand a chance. The story of the clash between Jasmine Crockett and Caroline Levit mirrors the deep divide in American society today, a nation where free speech, social media, and politics collide in unrelenting battles. In the story, Crockett represents the outraged voice of those who feel truth is being warped by misinformation on X, like when she screamed about the consequences of lies tearing communities apart. In contrast, Levit, with her icy calm, defends the stance that people must be free to speak even if it leads to chaos, like her line, "You don't control the narrative anymore," that set Crockett off. This clash echoes real debates on X and public forums across America, where conservative and progressive groups endlessly spar over power and truth. The lesson here isn't just to stay calm like Levit or fight like Crockett, but to realize that in a polarized society, how we communicate matters more than ever. Levit won not because she was right but because she controlled her emotions, turning Crockett's anger into a weakness, like when she walked away coolly amid the chaos. In today's America, where people are quick to get swept up in online or real-life arguments, learn to listen before you shout and stand firm in your beliefs without letting emotions cloud your reason. Crockett wasn't wrong to care, but she lost her edge by not staying composed. So argue with passion, but don't let it become a fire that burns you down. If you don't want to miss more fire and ice battles like Crockett versus Levit, hit that subscribe button now. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with more top-tier political drama.